Hello and welcome to the Fall 2022 Student Organization Workshop. I'm Dustin Lewis. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Senior Associate Director of Student Involvement here at Xavier. I'll be facilitating this recorded workshop for those of you that are looking for reference points or who perhaps became an officer at some point during the fall and missed the org workshops that Jill Finch and I coordinated. Speaking of Jill Finch, good for you to see the rest of our team, Office of Student Involvement, Gallagher Student Center and Commuter Services. Jill Finch is our Student Involvement Coordinator and works on the second floor in the Student Involvement Office, helping support all of our student organizations. Also great for you to know Ryan Spolar, who is the Director for Gallagher Student Center, as he manages the spaces and the events that a lot of our student groups use for both meetings and programs. In our office, we believe through our mission that through involvement, individuals discover their passions and develop their strengths to lead a purposeful life. What we hope to do is to be able to articulate this and connect it back to your experience as a student organization leader, acknowledging that you as a leader and an officer with your group have the ability to truly enact change and affect the way that Xavier students experience the university through their involvement and through their activities. We're going to start off today talking a little bit about some student organization finance pieces, and we'll process through the finance area, and then we'll talk through some other policies and processes that our office helps manage. So starting off, the student activity fee is an undergraduate fee. Every undergraduate student contributes $115 per semester as a full-time student, or $12 per credit as a part-time student. SGA, the Student Government Association, allocates this activity fee to university-affiliated organizations and subordinate bodies in the spring semester, as well as to all of our clubs and organizations later on each spring. The activity fee matters because it is collected exclusively from undergraduate students, and therefore our policy and rule is that the officers of our organizations should be undergraduate students. They should be the ones that make decisions about how money gets spent. We also ask that our undergraduate student organizations really primarily serve undergraduate students. Since they're the ones contributing to the fee, they should be benefiting from the resources and access that the fee provides. Every student organization has a fund number. It's a 6-digit number beginning with an 81, and it's unique to your organization. To find this, you can go to EngageXU, go find your group, and then as an officer, you can click on Settings, More, and look at the Student Org Fund Number. Again, you'll probably want to put this in your phone as a note, and you'll want to refer back to the student organization fund number anytime you're submitting any kind of financial form or depositing funds at the bursar's office. The accounting book is a great feature in EngageXU. It's something that only officers can view, officers being admins or administrators for your group, but it is connected to the university's banner system, which is our official record system. You can go to EngageXU, navigate to your group, and then click on Accounting Book, and you'll be able to see what's our current balance, how much funding do we have. You also have the ability as officers to adjust permissions if you want to further limit access to certain officers. Perhaps you only want your advisor, treasurer, and president to have access to this. And then one other feature is you can click Show Archived. If you look at the graphic at the bottom of your screen, Show Archived allows you to see previous year's allocations, revenue, and expenses. So it's a historical record for you to kind of get an idea of what have you spent or what have you brought in the past. When it comes to being able to access your funds, one of the forms you can use is the student payment advance form. This is something new this year. Organizations can take out one advance at a time, up to $300 in total, and this year it's going to be distributed with the Focus Blue card. So in previous years, the university has had a cash advance form, but as hopefully you've noticed, much of the university is moving to a cashless model. And so we no longer distribute cash advances, we distribute Focus Blue cards. The card itself is branded, so it looks like a MasterCard or Visa, but it doesn't have a name on it. And basically it's loaned out to your student organization for single use, meaning you've got an event coming up, you might be running around and making a few different purchases for that one singular event, but the card is loaned out, so you'll take it, make your purchases, and then return the card along with the receipts back to the controller's office, which is where the card is issued. The controller's office, just so you know, is located in Schmidt Hall, which is down the Academic Mall. It's sort of across from the library, next to Edgecliff Music Hall. And it's in the first floor overlooking the field behind Xavier, the soccer field. So it's overlooking like Victory Parkway. Advances are only going to be issued for fully approved events submitted through EngageXU, so make sure you submit your event and get it approved first before you try to access funds. The individual listed on the advance is the person responsible for the advance. So what's important to note here is that if you are the student who makes the request in EngageXU and gets a card issued to you, you're responsible for what happens to that card. If you loan it to another student or hand it off to them and they lose it or don't give you back receipts, you are the person who will be responsible for the missing funds, and ultimately it can be charged against your bursar bill. So just be aware of that. If you're the person taking it out, you need to make sure that you use it yourself, or if you do let someone else use the card, they have to be responsible and give you back the card and the receipts. Focus Blue Card can only be used to purchase goods, so you shouldn't be paying performers or individuals or using Focus Blue to make rentals. You should be using it at point of sale areas. So it's things like at a register at Target or Kroger or Walmart, or perhaps making an online purchase for a sale, but you need to be using it in a point of sale space. Your organization is responsible for tracking and maintaining any of the receipts you have with the advance. Missing receipts will not be accepted. So if you lose a receipt, there's nothing we can do about it unless you can get that receipt reproduced. What I highly encourage you, a pro tip, is that if there's anything involving receipts, immediately pull out your phone and take a picture of your receipt right there on site before you even put the receipt in a bag, because you're more likely to lose a little piece of paper and you're less likely to lose your phone. So if there's no questions on student payment advances, we'll keep going. But with the payment advance, it's just good to know that you're borrowing out this card and you need to return it within 7 days with those receipts back to the controller's office. One more piece, just so you know, if you make the purchase at a restaurant and there is a tip involved, you must write down the tip amount and the final total charged on your card on that receipt. Otherwise, we have no record of the tip and we can't assess that as we are returning the card. It gets returned to the controller and then they zero balance out the card. So they basically take all the funds off of it and charge your organization what you actually spent. So pre-spend authorization form is also in EngageXU, and this is for individuals, especially students, who want to spend more than $300 of your own money and you expect to be reimbursed for this. You need to submit a pre-spend authorization form first that needs to be approved by your advisor and then come to student involvement for approval. The reason we have this form is that sometimes when you're making a purchase of a larger value, there might be other means or other ways that we can pay for it so that you don't have to take that expense on, knowing that you may or may not be using like mom or dad's credit card, or you may not have the financial means to hover with that expense for very long waiting for reimbursement. So the pre-spend authorization notifies student involvement, hey, I need to make a purchase that's a little bit more substantial, and it gives us the opportunity to intervene and say, hey, we actually have another way that you can pay for this that doesn't require you putting it on a personal card. Student reimbursements, this is another form. We reimburse students using Zelle, which is a secure system that is bank to bank. Students can get reimbursed by Zelle for purchases made up to $300. Over 300, you can get reimbursed, but remember you need to submit that pre-spend authorization form first. When you're submitting the student reimbursement form in EngageXU, you have to upload itemized copies of receipts in order to get reimbursed. So again, the pro tip, as soon as you get a receipt, take a picture of it because you're ultimately going to need that picture to be uploaded into Engage. The university is tax exempted, so we do not reimburse for sales tax. Make sure that you take a copy of our tax exemption form with you whenever you're making purchases. You can find that on our website if you go to xavier.edu/clubs and click on forms, or you can go to the university's website and search university tax exempt form. Advisors are reimbursed in a similar way, but there's actually an advisor reimbursement form. The same rules and policies apply to advisors because, again, these are the same funds. And advisors also get reimbursed through Zelle. The last form you can use to make a purchase is a purchase form, and this is used to order items from Amazon or office supplies, which we order from Brown Enterprise Solutions. The purchase form is used also to pay vendors. So for example, you might get some sort of a quote or an invoice or a contract. You shouldn't sign the contract. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, but you can upload it into the purchase form along with the W-9 form. It's the IRS form so that the university can set up that payment with a new vendor. You don't use a purchase form to hire students. So if you are going to hire a fellow student to be a DJ or graphic designer or whatnot, they have to be set up through student employment payroll. So contact me to do this. My email is lewisd6@xavier.edu. The Amazon and office supply thing is helpful for you to know because the university has a Prime business account that's tax exempted. If you make an Amazon purchase on your own, you probably will pay sales tax, but you won't get reimbursed for it. If you make the order through this purchase form and say, here's some links to the Amazon items and here's quantities of what I need, we then can make the purchase, get it through Business Prime. It'll be billed directly to your club and you don't have to get reimbursed or lose sales tax. But you should add on just a couple extra days for any orders because it's going through the university mail system. Workflow approvals, just so you can see these different ways of accessing your money. Essentially, it starts with you, the student, initiates the expenditure or fills out the form. It then moves over to your advisor, and then finally comes over to student involvement to verify and authorize that expense. One thing you should note, if you're waiting on a form or you haven't received approval yet, many times it's pending with your advisor. So especially if you're in a hurry or you need something sooner than later, I'd encourage you to send a follow-up email to your advisor to say, hey, I just submitted a form. Would you mind to go in and approve it? When it comes to money, you can't donate funds or create a scholarship with activity fee dollars. What matters here is that you can donate and make a scholarship, just not with activity fee dollars. Those activity fee dollars were contributed by students and undergrad students to create activities, events, opportunities on campus. They weren't meant to be distributed into an individual. So it's not like someone puts in $115 as a student, but then walks away with $1,000 scholarship. That's not really fair or equitable. You can, however, use the activity fee dollars that go to your club to create events and opportunities where you can then fundraise, and those fundraise dollars can turn into donations and or scholarships. Your treasurer or your fundraising chair should be responsible for tracking these dollars separately because everything's going to get deposited into your student organization fund. And you want to make sure that you're following along and noting, okay, we raised this money for this purpose, and this other money over here was our SGA dollars or our activity fee dollars for our club events. March Gladness, just as a note here, is also a great time each spring to consider creating some sort of a focused campaign for fundraising. When it comes to contracts, students should not sign contracts on behalf of the university. An advisor can sign contracts for limited services like space rentals or catering, but really professional services like equipment rentals, they need a certificate of insurance on file. Any type of performer, speaker entering into contract, those are going to need a performance agreement form or an independent contractor form. So the biggest piece is if you're trying to hire someone who's a performer or a professional service, you will want to make sure that those all get submitted through the purchase form unsigned, and then we will take care of getting the signatures for you and getting that finalized for payment as well. Contract student involvement well in advance if you're trying to contract a performer or speaker, and we're happy to help. When in doubt, just to ask first, and again, give us plenty of time to assist you. Contract review at some points can move slowly depending on how big the contract is. Now we're going to switch gears and talk about events and activities. We want you to submit all of your events in EngageXU. Your student organization has an EngageXU page, provided that you're a recognized group. So you should be going in and submitting any of your events, your meetings, your activities, and you should also be tracking attendance with those events. When you first submit that event, please try and put as much accurate detail as possible, including any confirmed spaces, promotions, graphics, etc. Because if you go back later and change the details, the form is going to reset and it's going to route again, needing everyone's approval for a second time. When I said tracking attendance, we've got a how-to sheet on our website, but it's pretty easy. You can use the Campus Groups app on your phone to check people into the event, which you probably have experienced as a student before. You also can use your phone or a laptop to look up individuals, which is really easy, especially if you've got like a small group meeting or a small event, just to be able to check in and note who's attending. The attendance part matters because it helps us to better understand where and how students are getting engaged on campus. And it also helps us to be able to plan ahead and direct resources when we see that there's a lot of interest or engagement around certain types of events and activities. Space reservations, some of these can be done through EngageXU. The form acts as a space reservation request for places like outdoor on the Xavier Yard and the Academic Mall or in Justice Atrium. Classrooms are reserved through the registrar's office. Gallagher reservations can be done online through Mazevo, which is our online system for Gallagher. Hub reservations are made through the Rec Sports staff, and CentOS reservations are made through the CentOS Center staff. EngageXU, as you start filling out the supplemental event form, you'll see it'll populate for you an opportunity to look at our contact guide to be able to see who exactly do I contact if I'm looking for spaces like classrooms or hub or CentOS, etc. But if you are trying to reserve outdoor, if you're putting flags or signs outside, or if you're trying to do something in the Justice Atrium, that all can be done through your initial event form with EngageXU because those spaces are managed by student involvement. When it comes to food trucks, you should just know that Xavier does have an exclusivity contract with Chartwells, but Chartwells is pretty cool about letting us have food trucks here and there. We just have to sort of monitor and control that we don't have too many food trucks too often. The big piece is just indicating when you're filling out your form whether or not there's a food truck involved, and also just knowing that this really only matters in the relation to trucks. If you're just getting food delivered from a business off campus and they're going to drop and go, or they're providing catering, there's a lot more flexibility, I would say, with that mechanism. When it comes to fundraising, we want student organizations to register all your fundraising activities. This can be selling things to your members like t-shirts or club apparel. It can be sales outside of the club. So you might do like a Yankee Candle sale, letter writing campaigns, dues collection, working an event to generate revenue, like working concessions at a game or perhaps working concessions at like a Bengals football game. And even collecting donated items for charities, so like food donations or disaster relief. Student groups are prohibited from selling homemade baked goods. That is a health code violation. So if you're wanting to do like some kind of a bake sale, you have to go purchase those baked goods from a bakery or from a business with a certified bakery in it. When you're fundraising for charitable or philanthropic purposes, again, just a reminder, your organization needs to carefully track the funds that are raised and make sure that you're responsible for processing that entire donation as a payment to the charity through the university. Dues can be easily collected through EngageXU, so just contact me if you're interested in setting up some online dues payments. When it comes to hosting a campus public speaker, so this is inviting a guest either online or in person to talk to your organization that is from outside Xavier, you want to make sure that you indicate that you've got a speaker, and we'll ask you just a few questions about that speaker, what they're talking about, what their expertise is. You should know controversial events are not going to be denied on the basis of controversy, but they will be considered on how the university may best prepare a response. When it comes to political activities, the university's IRS designation of tax exempt requires that we also are not affiliated with any particular political campaign or party. And so it's important student organizations acknowledge like you have the opportunity to participate in certain kinds of lobbying or political campaign related activities like voter registration, but you have to do so in the name of your own organization. The university can't be seen as endorsing a particular candidate or party. So begin all planning for political activities by submitting your event in EngageXU and then it will be reviewed by student involvement. We will consult with the government relations director, which is Sean Riney, as needed. Alcohol can be served at student events, but you do have to request permission and you have to comply with the university's alcohol and other drugs policy. You start by submitting the event in EngageXU and indicating in the supplemental form that alcohol is going to be part of the event. Some of the considerations to think about is that the consumption of alcohol can't be the focal point for the activity, meaning we're never going to approve a pub crawl or bar crawl. But there are times when the activity itself could be educational, like going and touring Rheingeist and learning how beer is made, as well as sampling the product. The majority of your attendees have to be over the age of 21. The advisor has to be present the entire time. And again, some other examples of events where alcohol might be approved is it could be like end of the year celebrations or galas or awards or dinners, where there tends to be a reason people are gathering and a reason that alcohol might be present, and it's not just kind of a throwdown or a dance or party. Motion picture copyright. So just so you know, the copyright law prohibits a student organization from screening any kind of feature film or documentary without a public license. Educational exemptions exist, but are limited only to when an instructor, so like your professor, uses it as part of their course. Even if you have a professor or a faculty member that advises your club, this exemption does not transfer onto the club. So you as a club are not the class, and therefore you do have to license whatever film it is you're trying to show so that you don't break copyright law. Some permitted streaming services that you can use for free. Netflix does allow original documentaries to be used. The university also subscribes to Canopy, which is spelled with a K, and that's through the university library. It's an online streaming service. It tends to have more documentaries and international films. And then also Spectrum U is the campus cable service right now. Every member of Xavier, when they are logged on to Xavier Wi-Fi, can access Spectrum U through the app, and you can stream live television or you can stream on-demand content that is good for the entire campus. Brand use promotional material and apparel. So all apparel or promotional items have to first be submitted for approval to the University Marketing and Communications Office. And there's an online form in Engage called the Promotional Materials and Apparel Approval Form. Student orgs are limited to either using the primary university brand or a secondary. So if you look to the right, the primary is the Xavier logo. The secondary, you can see the X and then student involvement. We can request a secondary brand for your organization if you're interested in doing so. So it looks very official and it has the X incorporated into it. You should also note, though, that D'Artagnan, Blue Blob, and the Sword are limited to athletic use only. And the university also limits vendors that can be used to only licensed vendors with the university. So for a complete list and also to see the steps for you to order any type of promotional material or apparel, go to xavier.edu/apparel. This page has a step-by-step guide and walks through with different links that you need. Please note, though, new vendors are not being licensed at this time, and that's a decision that the university made to try to limit and focus our spend so that we're using a pool of the same vendors to get better discounts and better deals with our spending. Student domestic travel. So we define travel or trip as more than 35 miles away from campus or involving some kind of an overnight stay, regardless of the distance from Xavier. Students should submit a student domestic travel itinerary form through EngageXU at least 3 weeks prior to travel. When submitting your itinerary form, you'll be required to submit a list of participants, and it can be a partial list when you first submit, but we do need you to email us an updated list or a final list at least 48 hours before you travel. The reason that the itinerary list matters is because we want to make sure that if there's any sort of an emergency on your trip, the university knows exactly who is traveling with the group, and vice versa. If there's some sort of catastrophic event back here on campus, we want to know which students are accounted for because they are out of the city or traveling overnight with the club. You'll need to submit some detailed travel information about hotels, flights, transportation, when you're departing, when you're returning, etc. And then just know that any purchases associated with your trip as a student org will only be approved for payment once that trip has been submitted and approved. Trip organizers also need to inform students if they're not feeling well or if they're presenting any symptoms of COVID, they should test and/or not travel. If a student develops symptoms while traveling, they will be asked to test, and if positive, they should isolate away from the group. And also just note that our current policy is that if a student tests positive for COVID while traveling, they should stay and finish their isolation out alone and not return back with the group, not traveling together via car or bus or train or plane. We do not want the student with COVID exposing more students. Off-campus activities are different. They're defined as an event taking place off campus within that 35-mile radius and not including an overnight stay. So examples could be like a group going to Perfect North Slopes or doing some kind of a service project downtown, maybe hosting some kind of day-long retreat in Cincinnati, going to a Reds game, etc. These activities are just normal events that get submitted through EngageXU for review and approval. And there should be no additional forms needed unless it's a higher risk activity in which we then want you to complete waivers. So something like rock climbing. Xavier has a new anti-hazing policy that went into effect summer 22. It's following Ohio's Collins Law, which was passed in 2021, requiring all students and advisors to go through a hazing awareness and prevention. All of you should have received a link this fall, and you were asked to complete it by October 1st. So hopefully by the time you're watching this, you will have completed that already. It is mandatory that students and employees complete the training. And per the law, in order to participate in some kind of a group or organization, you have to have completed this mandated training. Hazing is often thought of as extreme actions required of members pledging to join a group or an activity where they're subjected to humiliation or rigorous physical activities as a barrier to joining. But hazing can be that and so much more. A few examples being new members might be asked to perform unnecessary duties that aren't assigned to others or older members, requiring them to greet members in a particular specific manner when you see them, requiring people to carry certain items around campus, wearing embarrassing or uncomfortable clothing, forced consumption. Basically, if you ask yourself, why do we have to do this just to join? Or if you say why and someone responds with, well, because everyone else before you did it, there might be a pattern of hazing and you should consider reporting it. The cutoff for campus programming every semester is the Friday before finals week at midnight. So campus events sponsored by student groups should stop and there should be none scheduled until after finals have officially ended for the semester. The university also has a gambling policy, and it's short. We can't exchange money for betting, like split the pot, cash prizes with raffle, etc. Students can't receive cash as a prize. Finally, the university has a program called Baseline that we enforce, and the purpose of Baseline is to make sure that all of our student clubs are active and engaging, and that we're really here to meet the needs of the students. So Baseline requires that each club meet at least once a month, so that's 3 times in the fall, 4 times in the spring, and that also your club officers meet with your faculty or staff advisor at least once a month, again, 3 times in the fall, 4 times in the spring. Each club has to submit a membership recruitment and retention plan, which was due back in the beginning of October. And then each group has to also produce at least 2 events per semester outside of a regular club meeting and 1 service opportunity or service engagement at some point throughout the year. We also do strongly encourage that our student clubs spend at least 85% of the funds allocated by SGA at some point throughout the fiscal year toward club activities, events, and approved travel. All right, well, thank you all for tuning in and listening. And again, come see us in the Office of Student Involvement located in Gallagher 210 anytime. Thanks a lot and have a good one.